But when we experience a setback, our instinct is to immediately focus on what went wrong. We analyze the failure, dissect the mistake, and obsess over how far we've fallen. It's natural. We're wired to solve problems, and when life throws us a challenge, our first response is to fix it. But the truth is, if we only focus on the problem, we'll miss the deeper opportunity that's waiting for us underneath the surface. The real question we need to start with isn't what went wrong, it's why does this moment matter? Because until we understand the why, our comeback will be reactionary. It will be an attempt to run from pain rather than a journey toward purpose. You see, setbacks aren't just unfortunate events. They're invitations. They are life's way of giving us a moment to pause, reflect, and redirect. But more importantly, they offer us the chance to rediscover why we started in the first place. That's where transformation begins, not in trying to fix the setback, but in reconnecting with our reason to rise. Think about the greatest comebacks in history. Whether it's in sports, business, relationships, or personal health, the story always begins with a moment of loss. But it never ends there. The turnaround doesn't happen because someone had the perfect plan or access to resources. It happens because they found something inside themselves, a belief, a calling, a mission that was worth more than the pain they had to go through. They didn't just come back to get what they lost. They came back to become someone stronger. They came back with a deeper understanding of who they are and why they're here. I once spoke with a leader who had built a successful company from the ground up. Then, in a matter of months, due to a mixture of economic downturn and internal missteps, he lost nearly everything. Revenue plummeted, employees left, and his confidence was shattered. He told me, "I spent the first few weeks trying to fix the business. I worked longer hours, made desperate decisions, and kept telling myself I just have to get back to where I was." But nothing worked. He kept pushing harder and falling further behind. Then one day, he stopped. Not because he gave up, but because he realized he was asking the wrong question. He had been obsessed with how to fix things, but he had never asked himself why it was worth fixing. So he stepped away from the spreadsheet, shut off the noise, and went for a long walk. That's when the clarity came. "I remembered what this business was meant to do in the first place," he said. "It wasn't about scaling fast or being the biggest. It was about helping people feel seen. It was about solving a very human problem." That rediscovery changed everything. He didn't return to the same strategies. He returned to the original mission. And from that place of clarity, he made new decisions, the better decisions. The comeback didn't happen overnight, but it began the moment he stopped focusing on the problem and reconnected with the purpose. When we face setbacks, we often forget that we are still in control of the story we tell. We don't get to control what happened, but we absolutely get to choose why it happened for us. There's a massive difference between being a victim of failure and being a student of it. One keeps you stuck, the other moves you forward. The first step to any meaningful comeback is to zoom out. Instead of asking, how do I get back on track, ask, why do I want to get back at all? That question forces you to look beyond your ego and into your essence. Because sometimes the setback isn't there to derail your journey, it's there to redirect it. You might find that the goal you were chasing wasn't actually aligned with what matters most to you. You might realize that the path you were on was driven by validation, not vision. And if that's the case, then your comeback isn't about returning to who you were, it's about stepping into who you're meant to be. This is what separates the reactive from the resilient. The reactive individual tries to recreate the past. The resilient one reimagines the future. And the only way to reimagine anything is to anchor yourself in something deeper than outcomes. You need a why that can weather disappointment, a purpose that doesn't evaporate the moment you hit resistance. And when you have that, you'll find energy in places you didn't know existed. You'll wake up not because you have to, but because something inside you wants to. You'll be able to endure discomfort because you understand it's not permanent, it's part of the process. Setbacks won't define you because your purpose is louder than your fear. Let me be clear, this doesn't mean you ignore the pain. It doesn't mean you slap on a smile and pretend everything's okay. It means you allow the pain to point you back to your priorities. Pain isn't the enemy, indifference is. If you feel hurt, disappointed, or frustrated, it's because you care. And that caring is a clue. It tells you there's something meaningful at stake. That's where your why lives. We've been conditioned to treat setbacks like detours. But what if they're not? What if they're the very terrain we're supposed to travel? What if instead of getting off track, you're actually being invited to find a better track, one that's built around authenticity, purpose, and contribution? So the next time you find yourself knocked down, before you reach for a plan, a fix, or a checklist, pause. Ask yourself, why is this worth it? Don't answer too quickly. Sit with it. Let it rise to the surface. When you find the answer, write it down. Speak it out loud and let it guide everything that comes next. Because the truth is, you don't need a map to make a comeback. You need a reason. When things fall apart, the most powerful tool you have isn't a plan, it's your perspective. What you see in a moment of failure will determine what you do next. And more importantly, it will shape who you become as a result. Most people think the comeback starts when the situation improves. When the job comes back, when the opportunity reappears, when the pain subsides. But that's not how it works. The comeback always starts inside. It starts the moment you change the story you're telling yourself. Not to escape reality, but to reframe it with purpose. We often say things like, I failed, or I lost everything, or this ruined me. But those aren't facts. They're interpretations. And if you look closely, you'll notice that the story you're telling yourself is often written in past tense, as if the ending has already been decided, as if growth is no longer an option. But what if you chose to tell a different story? What if instead of I failed, it became I discovered a gap I need to close? Instead of I lost everything, it became I'm learning what truly matters. Instead of this ruined me, it became this revealed something I couldn't see before. That shift changes everything because the truth is your interpretation shapes your energy and your energy shapes your actions. I spoke with a young entrepreneur recently who had launched a project with everything she had, time, money, belief, identity. When it didn't take off, her first instinct was to say, I guess I'm not cut out for this. That was her story. And it was a heavy one. It made her avoid people. It made her ignore new ideas. It made her shrink. But when we started talking about what actually happened, the facts looked very different. The timing was off. The product was good, but not positioned correctly. The effort was there. The audience wasn't ready. I asked her, if your best friend went through the same thing, would you say they failed? She smiled a little and said, no. I'd tell them they're early. That's perspective. That's reframing. It's not about delusion, it's about truth. Because the truth is, the facts of a setback are rarely as harsh as the narrative we wrap around them. When we experience disappointment, the brain loves to loop the worst-case scenario. It looks for patterns of defeat, reinforces doubt, and builds walls around future possibility. Why? Because it's trying to protect us. If we believe we're already broken, we won't risk breaking again. It's a defense mechanism. But in doing so, we imprison ourselves. Not with reality, but with our version of it. So the good news is that stories are editable. Every day you wake up, you get to choose which part of the experience becomes the headline. Is the headline, I failed, or is it, I learned something no one can take from me? Is it, they rejected me, or is it, I now know who's truly aligned with my vision? The choice isn't always easy, but it is yours. Reframing doesn't mean sugarcoating. It means giving yourself the dignity of context. It means stepping far enough back from the pain that you can see the bigger picture. You might not control the chapter you're in, but you do control the message you take from it. Perspective is powerful because it shapes how you show up. If you believe you're a failure, You'll walk into the next room with your shoulders down and your voice low. But if you believe you've grown, you'll walk in with clarity, presence, and conviction. It's not because you've avoided hard times, but because you've decided they don't get to define you. Let's be honest, we live in a culture that worships perfection and punishes mistakes. It's easy to think your value disappears the moment things don't go your way, but growth doesn't come from staying comfortable. Growth comes from discomfort, and the only way to grow through discomfort is to give it meaning. Meaning is what gives pain direction. Without meaning, pain turns into bitterness. But with meaning, pain becomes fuel. It becomes the story of your strength, the lesson you carry forward, the wisdom you offer to others. And meaning starts when you decide to reframe your setback not as the end of something, but as the beginning of something deeper. There's a line I once heard that stuck with me. You're not starting over, you're starting from experience. That's the gift of perspective. You don't go back to square one. You go forward with insight, with grit, with a story that has roots. And the best part? Reframing your setback doesn't require anyone's permission. You don't need validation from the world to change the way you see your situation. You just need courage, the courage to sit with your failure without letting it define your future. The courage to ask yourself better questions, not why me, but what's this here to teach me? When you shift your questions, you shift your story. And when you shift your story, you unlock momentum. Setbacks don't end when the situation changes. They end when you change. When you decide that this will not be the chapter that breaks you, but the one that builds you, that's the comeback. That's the power of perspective. You stop seeing life as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something that's happening for you, even when it's hard. It doesn't mean it won't hurt. It doesn't mean the path will be easy. But it means you're walking it with a different lens. One that sees possibility where others see problems. One that sees learning where others see loss. One that turns the most painful moments into the most powerful fuel. So if you're in a setback right now, pause. Take a breath. And ask yourself, what story am I telling right now? If that story makes you smaller, rewrite it. If that story takes away your power, reclaim it. The facts may be fixed, but the meaning is up to you. Because the comeback doesn't begin when you succeed. It begins when you see differently. When life knocks us down, the first thing we often reach for is a solution. We look for the fastest way to recover what we lost, to feel in control again. But solutions aren't the foundation of real comebacks, values are. Circumstances change, strategies evolve. But what you believe, what you stand for, what matters to you on a soul deep level, that is what remains. And that is where the real strength comes from. The most resilient people in the world aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who know exactly who they are when everything around them is falling apart. They're anchored. Not in status, not in success, but in something stronger. Something that doesn't shift when the market crashes or a relationship ends or a dream falls short. They're anchored in their values. We're taught from an early age to measure ourselves by outcomes, grades, awards, titles, income. And when we succeed, we're praised. When we fail, we're questioned. But that conditioning creates a dangerous pattern. It ties our identity to our circumstances. So when something outside of us breaks down, we begin to believe that we've broken down too. But that's not the truth. The truth is that who you are is not defined by what happens to you. It's defined by what you stand on when everything else is uncertain. If your sense of self is built on things that shift, then you'll shift with them. But if your identity is rooted in values, integrity, growth, compassion, service, then no failure can take that from you. There is a story of a CEO I worked with years ago who was at the top of her industry. He had built a brand that people admired. Then one decision, publicly scrutinized, misunderstood, and quickly magnified by the media, sent the company into a downward spiral. She told me for weeks I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, this is the end, I'm ruined. But what she did next wasn't strategic, it was personal. She wrote down the 5 values she had founded the company on. Not a mission statement, not a marketing slogan, the real values, the ones she had written on a napkin in a coffee shop years before. Then she asked herself one question. Have I violated any of these values? The answer was no. The world was telling her she had failed. But her values were telling her she was still on track, just in a hard chapter. That moment of clarity became the turning point. She stopped chasing PR headlines. She stopped trying to convince people. She focused on rebuilding from the inside out, one value-driven decision at a time. The business recovered, but more importantly, so did her confidence. Not because the world changed its opinion, but because she remembered where her identity came from. That's the difference between being reactive and being rooted. Reactivity is based on fear. It scrambles for control. It plays defense. But being rooted in values gives you clarity, even in chaos. You can make hard decisions without second-guessing your worth. You can face failure without questioning your purpose, because your foundation is deeper than the noise. Comebacks built on values last. Comebacks built on ego don't. The ego wants recognition, validation, applause, but values want alignment, impact, contribution. When your comeback is about proving something to others, it never satisfies. It just shifts the pressure. But when your comeback is about becoming more aligned with who you truly are, it fuels you. You stop asking, how do I win? And you start asking, how do I live what I believe? And here's the most beautiful part. Values don't require perfect conditions to thrive. In fact, they often shine brightest when things are at their worst. Integrity doesn't matter much when everything is going well. It shows up when no one's watching. Resilience isn't proven in comfort. It's proven in discomfort. Compassion isn't tested in easy conversations. It's revealed in the difficult ones. So if you faced a setback, the best place to begin isn't with your goals. It's with your ground. Ask yourself, what do I believe? What matters most to me, even if it costs me something? What are the non-negotiables I want to live by, lead by, and come back to no matter what? Write them down. Not as a list to memorize, but as a mirror to reflect on. When things get hard again, and they will, that list becomes your compass. Not every situation will be clear. Not every outcome will be predictable. But if you know what you stand for, you'll know which way to move. Even if the next step is small. Even if the next step is painful. At least it's aligned. Values aren't abstract. They're practical. They show up in how you treat people when you're stressed, in what you prioritize when time is tight, in how you respond when things don't go your way. Your values are always at work. The only question is whether you're consciously living them or just reacting to the moment. People often think a comeback is about regaining what they lost, the position, the reputation, the control. But the truth is, the most meaningful comebacks aren't about going back at all. They're about moving forward with more clarity, more depth, and more alignment than ever before. They're about trading approval for authenticity, performance for purpose. In the end, your circumstances may change 100 times. But your values, when clearly defined and deeply held, will be your constant. They will keep you steady. They will help you choose courage over comfort, contribution over comparison, peace over pride. So when the storm hits, and it always will, don't reach for the illusion of control. Don't rush to fix or impress. Pause. Breathe. And remember what doesn't change. Remember who you are. Not just what you do. Let your values guide you. Let them rebuild you. Because the strongest comebacks aren't built from urgency. They're built from integrity. The moment you begin to rise from a setback, one of the first things you'll feel is the pressure to do it alone. To be strong, to prove something, to come back tougher, smarter, faster. Our culture has built this myth around the lone hero, the one who takes on the world without asking for help, without showing weakness. But real comebacks don't happen in isolation. They happen in community. You might think resilience is an individual trait, that grit, determination, and perseverance are personal qualities we develop in solitude. But resilience isn't something you build by going inward and shutting everyone out. It's something you strengthen when you let people in. The most powerful comebacks are relational. They are built on connection, not perfection. Think about it. When we're at our lowest, we don't just need answers. We need empathy. We need someone who sees us, not as a problem to fix, but as a person to support. Someone who doesn't offer hollow optimism, but grounded belief. Someone who says, I'm with you, not you should have known better. When we're going through something painful, our instinct is often to retreat, to withdraw, to hide our struggle because we're afraid of being judged. We tell ourselves, I'll reach out when I figure this out, or they wouldn't understand, or I don't want to be a burden. But that isolation only reinforces the shame. And shame thrives in silence. What we forget in those moments is that people can't support a version of us they don't see. And they can't care for a struggle we never share, so we suffer quietly, believing we're alone in our pain, when in reality, we're surrounded by people who would show up for us if only they knew how. One of the most courageous things you can do in a setback is to reach out. Not just for advice, but for presence. To say, I don't have all the answers, and I don't need to pretend that I do. That level of vulnerability doesn't make you weaker, it makes you real. And when you're real, people respond, not to your perfection, but to your honesty. I once spoke with a founder who had hit rock bottom. Her product launch had failed, and with it, so did her confidence. She was convinced everyone saw her as incapable. For weeks, she avoided meetings, turned down coffee invites, and kept saying, I just need to figure this out first. Finally, out of exhaustion, she confided in a mentor. She said 3 words that changed her entire direction. I need help. And that conversation didn't magically fix everything, but it changed the way she carried the load. Instead of seeing herself as broken, she began to see herself as human. Instead of trying to protect her image, she gave people permission to step in, and they did, offering insight, encouragement, even practical support she never knew was available. Her comeback didn't start with a pivot or a pitch deck. It started with connection. There's a difference between independence and isolation. Independence is healthy. It means you're responsible for your choices. But isolation is dangerous. It convinces you that your worth is tied to your ability to figure everything out on your own. And that belief is not only false, it's costly. Here's what's true. We are wired for connection. We are built to heal, grow, and thrive in relationship. When we surround ourselves with people who believe in us, who challenge us with care, who remind us of who we are when we forget, that's when our capacity multiplies. Not because they're doing the work for us, but because they help us carry what we thought we had to bear alone. Even more powerful is when you allow your setback to become someone else's encouragement. When you open up about your struggle, not to complain, but to connect. To say, I've been there too, or I'm still in it, but here's what I'm learning. You become a source of light for someone else who's walking a similar road. And in the process, your pain starts to serve a purpose bigger than just your own healing. This is where community becomes not just a support system, but a mirror. A place where others reflect back to you your worth, your values, your strength, especially in moments when you can't see them yourself. It doesn't mean everyone will understand your journey, but the right people will respect your honesty. And that respect creates safety. And in safety, we grow. Don't wait until you've figured it out to let people in. Letting people in is how you begin to figure it out. Let them see your mess, not just your success. Let them witness your uncertainty, your effort, your courage. Because the truth is, nobody connects with the image of someone who's never fallen. We connect with people who have fallen, gotten back up, and had the humility to say, I didn't do this alone. And don't just seek out support. Offer it too. Be the person who shows up when someone else is down. Ask better questions. Not just what happened, but how can I walk with you through this? Create spaces where failure is met with compassion, not criticism. Where people are encouraged to grow, not pressured to perform. That kind of culture changes lives, and it starts with you. So if you're facing a setback right now, resist the urge to isolate. Find your people. Call the friend. Message the mentor. Join the group. Share your story. Not to get attention, but to give yourself permission to be human, to be seen, to be supported, and to support others in return. Comebacks aren't solo climbs. They're shared journeys. And the strength you need might not come from within, it might come from around you, because we rise faster when we rise together. There's something incredibly powerful about momentum. Not the kind that comes from success, but the kind that comes after failure. The kind you build from scratch when you've lost your footing and have to decide whether to get back up. It's not easy, it's not instant, but it's real. And it's the only way forward. Because action, small, deliberate, value-driven action, is the heartbeat of every true comeback. Most people wait for motivation before they move. They wait for confidence, for clarity, for the right moment, but waiting is a trap. The longer you wait to feel ready, the more distant the comeback becomes. The truth is, you don't take action because you feel confident, you build confidence because you take action. When you're recovering from a setback, every step feels heavier. Doubt creeps in, fear becomes louder. You start questioning everything. Should I try again? What if it happens again? What if I fail again? And the mind loves these questions because they keep you in place, safe, still, but also stuck. The turning point is rarely dramatic. It's not a speech or an epiphany or a lightning bolt moment. It's a choice. A single, quiet, often unseen decision to move, to take one step. Even when you're tired, even when you're afraid, even when the step feels small, especially then, because consistency beats intensity every time. Anyone can show up with energy once, but real momentum is built in the quiet, disciplined, unglamorous actions repeated over time. The email you send, even though you don't feel like networking. The early morning when you sit down to write, even when no one's watching. The workout you show up for, not because you're inspired, but because you said you would. These are the small decisions that compound into progress. People love to celebrate the big moments, the awards, the breakthroughs, the comeback stories with perfect endings. But the most important part of a comeback is the middle. The messy, uncomfortable middle where nothing is guaranteed and you're still showing up. That's where character is forged. That's where the foundation is laid. There's a phrase I often come back to: win the day, not the year, not the decade, the day. Because when the big picture feels overwhelming, the best thing you can do is shrink the frame. Forget the mountaintop for a moment. Just focus on the next step. What's one thing? Just one that you can do today that moves you forward. Do that. Then do it again tomorrow. It might not look impressive. No one may even notice, but you'll notice. Because deep down, every step forward rewires your brain. It tells your nervous system, we're not done. It reminds your spirit, we're still in this. And that, more than anything, is how momentum is born. Taking action doesn't mean rushing. It doesn't mean ignoring the pain. It means moving with the pain, walking forward even if you're limping, showing up even if your voice shakes. Some days you'll run, other days you'll crawl. But both count, both are movement. And all movement matters. There's also something sacred about the discipline of small wins. Because every small win is a declaration that you're not letting the setback have the final word. You are reclaiming agency. You are rebuilding belief, one step at a time. A musician once told me, when I lost everything, I stopped playing for others. I started playing one song every morning just for me. That's how I healed. That's action. That's momentum. That's rebuilding from the inside out. And let's be clear, this isn't about hustling your way to redemption. It's not about proving your worth through productivity. It's about honoring your journey with movement. You don't owe the world a performance, but you do owe yourself progress, not perfection, progress. And that begins when you decide to start, no matter how messy or uncertain that starting point is. Here's what happens when you commit to consistent action. Clarity starts to follow. Not before, after. You don't wait for clarity to act. You act your way into clarity. You try things, you fail, you adjust, you learn. And in that process, the fog begins to lift. It's also where opportunity finds you. Not when you're waiting, but when you're moving. Doors open when you're in motion. People respond to energy. And energy is generated by action. Every time you move, you send a signal to yourself and to the world that you're not done yet, that there's more ahead. One of the greatest misconceptions about comebacks is that they require something massive, a big idea, a big break, a big change. But in reality, most comebacks are built on quiet, consistent, invisible effort. The repetition of ordinary actions done with extraordinary belief. That belief doesn't have to be loud, it just has to be present. You don't need to know how the whole story ends. You just need to believe that this chapter isn't the end. That what you do today matters, that your actions have weight, that even the smallest movement is evidence of strength. So ask yourself, what can I do today that aligns with the person I want to become? Not 10 things, just one. Send the message, make the call, get the rest, read the page, walk the mile, start the journal, take the step, let that action become the anchor that holds you in motion. Because momentum doesn't mean speed, it means direction, it means intention. And it means refusing to let the setback write your ending. Every day you move forward, no matter how slowly, you are declaring, I am not defined by what happened to me. I am defined by how I respond. That's what turns setbacks into comebacks. Not inspiration, not perfection, but steady, imperfect, relentless motion. You may not see the finish line yet, and that means the comeback has already begun. Because every comeback is just a series of courageous steps. And the next one is yours to take.